Hello, everyone. Yesterday I played against U.S. women champion um, Jennifer Yu. She's a woman grandmaster uh, with a rating of 2351 USCF and 2312 FIDE. And it was a very interesting game, and I wanted to go over this game. I don't make a lot of videos, but I hope someone will find this one interesting. So the time control we're playing, you get an hour and a half for 40 moves with a 30-second increment, and then you get 30 seconds sudden death. And in preparation for this game, I expected a lot of knight f3, g3, as well as English setups. So I reviewed those, and she did surprise me a little bit with just playing straight d4, c4. Not that I'm not ready for it, I just didn't review it specifically for this game, and there's a few things I can do, but I just decided to go with what I've been playing more lately, which is accelerated Queen's Indian. And this is all very reasonable. You see there are some very top players playing this as black, Mamidyarov, Karekin, etc. And she goes for what's called Petrosian system with a3. And on that move, there are a lot of options for black, but I pretty much always play d5, which is a main move. And here she can play bishop g5 or cd, or even queen c2. So she takes and queen c2. Already here I confused some of my lines, and as you see here, the main move is knight takes c3. I did play bishop e7, which is also fine, but playing bishop e7 allows white an additional option of playing bishop d2, which is kind of like the line that I'm not very prepared for. So I should have just taken on c3. But I did play bishop e7, e4, knight takes c3, bc, and I castled. If I play c5 immediately, I was concerned with bishop b5 check, and I would have to play bishop c6, which was played, as you see, quite a bit. But then she can just play bishop d3, and my bishop on c6 is a bit odd, I would say. So I wasn't familiar with that line, and I still don't like it anyway. And after castle again, I sort of confused my line a little bit. Again, what I played is okay, but it's preferable in this particular variation to hold on with taking on d4. And the very main move is queen c7 here, which was played by Kramnik against Garry Kasparov in 2004, as well as Peter Leko against Carlsen. Almashi played against Vugar Gashimov. All of those games finished in a draw. And I did look a little bit into that, and maybe that is what I'll do in the future in this line, queen c7 or queen c8. CD was also played by Elianov, who's a very strong Ukrainian grandmaster. And here again, we can go queen c8 or knight c6. So far I'm doing okay. Bishop b2 makes a lot more sense here than bishop e3, as this bishop is pointing towards g7. And I played rook c8 and queen e2. So we got to this point. This is move number 14. And Jennifer did not spend any time. She still had an hour and a half. And I spent about 14 minutes to get to this point. And you see here in all the board games, there's been bishop f6 and knight a5 played. And I did play knight a5, which is a pretty standard idea in this opening. She did play rook a d1. And here again, like, I employed the idea which works in some other lines, but doesn't really work very well in this line. So the only reasonable move that computer approves here is bishop f6, and something like this is what black has to go for. Kind of like play bishop f6, play h6, and play a reactive game to what white is doing. Instead, I ended up playing queen d7, which is an idea in many lines of Queen's Indian. The queen is heading to a4, and then we trying to put some counterplay on the queen side. And here Jen played knight e5, but d5 was much stronger. And actually, GM Sarana lost here very quickly, I think. So after d5, if I take, and look at all her pieces just pointing to my king, everything's coming all at once, and this could end in a total disaster. For example, after bishop takes d5, the engine shows that I'm already lost. Like rook e1, bishop on e7 is hanging, and if I move my bishop, let's say to c5, now bishop e4 just picks up a piece. This is a very bad position for black, despite being up a pawn. So my best bet after d5, probably not to take the pawn, but I would have a very difficult time in this position. She plays knight e5, I played my queen a4 move, and here again, she had an opportunity to play a very, very strong move, bishop b5. And I was banking on queen b3 here with intention of playing rook c2. And there is no rook d3 because of queen takes b5. Visually, it looks decent for black. And I analyzed with the Jen afterwards, and a couple of other strong players, and nobody proposed the computer move bishop d7. So computer just sacrificing a piece and thinks that white has a tremendous attack because queen g4 is coming, e6 is going to drop, the rook is hanging. So something like this, and already black is losing, I believe. Not all of his lines are like the only lines, but this just to show you that black's position is very difficult because, and I was trying to avoid that all game, by the way. Like if position opens up, it's not gonna matter that much that I'm up a piece, as my pieces are kind of stuck on the queen side. My queen side counterplay isn't really working out very well, and she has an advantage in this area of the board where she can overwhelm my king side. And I'm not going to show all the lines because I want this video to be reasonably long, not extremely long, so you guys could actually get through it. So this was a very, very interesting piece sacrifice, but again, it's easy to look at engine output. It's extremely hard to go through the sacrifice, especially look from her standpoint. She's playing somebody 110 points low rated USCF, but 300 low rated points FIDE. So if she's not fully sure, I mean, I'm sure she considered that move. If she's not fully sure about the piece sacrifice, she's not going to take that necessary risk. So after d5, queen a4, sorry, she went d5 here, and I didn't really consider taking on d5. I think this is just going to be suicide. Actually going to turn the engine from this point on, kind of show you guys what's going on. So I did play f6, trying to evict her knight. And as I said, bishop b5 was very strong. You see computer thinks it's +2. But knight g4 is a much more human move. And here I played knight c4. And in this spot, she spent 34 minutes. So she's already started thinking. And she did spend 4 minutes on knight g4. So I don't know how seriously she calculated bishop b5. And I spent 33 minutes to this point, but I was pretty happy with my position because I have a lot of pressure on her queen side. I'm trying to trade my knight for her bishop on b2 or her bishop on d3, and you know, I felt really good about this position. For example, if she were to take on e6, now I can take on b2, and then I'm taking on e4. And I felt like this pawn is rather a weakness than a strength. And I have a bishop pair. But in my Facebook post, I mentioned that there are 4 moments that I missed her ideas. So her next move, d6, came out as a shock to me. I didn't even think this move was possible. And when she played it, she fought for 11 minutes to play this move. I was like trying to understand what's going on here. So I basically have three options: knight takes d6, bishop takes d6, and bishop d8. And out of these three options, I ended up playing the worst move, bishop takes d6. But knight takes d6 is, she's definitely going to play e5. And she told me after the game that she wasn't sure if the pawn sacrifice was sound. But it looked pretty terrifying to me. So I thought I had to take, and then knight takes e5. And even though I'm up a pawn, again, we have all these guys trying to come after us. And it's just very difficult. Bishop d5 is what the engine proposes. And then let's just follow the top computer line here. I'm not sure what's going on here. This is like a really mad position. If this is what engine proposes, I'm just following the top line. Or it says like it's equality somehow, but this is just totally insane position. I don't know like how easy it would be for me to play this. There's all kind of threats coming. And even looking at it, even seeing the zeros here, I don't feel any confidence in black's position. So I really wanted to avoid a situation where I'm just getting attacked like that. Looking back into it, maybe bishop d8 was the most interesting option. It looks quite a bit passive, but the d6 pawn is a concern, and then we're trying to take on b2. Bishop c3 seems to be the best move. Knight takes a3, and computer prefers white, despite the fact that black is up a pawn. But it's not so terrible as you see. And some of his evaluations, I honestly don't even understand, like why is it plus 0.7 specifically. Well, anyway, so I played bishop takes d6, and even though the engine hates my move, this is what I was banking on. Here, and I fully expected her to take. And here I calculated two moves. I saw rook c2 does not work, and I thought just queen d1, and after queen takes e4, f3, and I thought I'm just losing here. But I was intending to play rook takes e4, and I thought she had to play knight e3, and I was gonna go bishop a6. And after her queen moves, I wasn't sure where. This is the position that we were gonna get: king takes or knight takes. And in this position, I get a rook and 2 pawns for a bishop and a knight. And this position I apparently did not assess correctly, at least not according to the engine. Engine likes white with plus 1.2, and I thought that I'm at least equal here. And my rough intent was to play e5 at some point and shut down that bishop. Yeah, I'm not sure why white would be better. And again, looking at this game with a couple of high-rated players, they like none of them mentioned to me that they thought white would be better by that much. So this is like a really complex position as well. But I thought this would be okay for me. And here Jen fought for a long time, and I even started wondering, like, what is she thinking about? She fought for 20 minutes here, and she just took on f6, and that was the second move I missed in this game. Total surprise. And this leads to a very, very complicated play. So if I take on f6, she was gonna play queen g4 check. Now king h7 loses, I thought, to rook takes d6. And now, for example, I can't take on e4 because of bishop takes f6, and I'm just getting checkmated. Rook takes f6, rook d8. with mate. So it appears that I have to go to f7, and she was planning on queen h5, and now king e7 is the line she calculated, and this is what she saw. She was going to sacrifice another piece, king takes f6, queen h4 check, and after king g6, this is like, I was amazed how far she calculates comparing to how far I calculate. She saw this resource, rook takes e6. Very interesting geometry. I can't take on e6 because my queen is lost, and otherwise I'm just getting murdered here. If I move my king, for example, and king g8, rook e8 mate. So it is pretty scary to go into this line against somebody as strong as her. So, but I did have the bailout here, king to g8 apparently, relative bailout, and she would have to repeat and then take on d6, take on e4. In this position, black is up a pawn, but opposite color bishop in the endgame typically lead to very sharp positions, and my king is very weak. So after queen h3, just following the engine's main line here, even if I visibly consolidate, this would be very difficult to play, as my king is exposed from all the directions, but maybe holdable, although this is not an easy position. So I decided that was like way too risky to go for that, and I took on f6 with a rook. Now engine likes taking the bishop, which would lead to similar line as we just looked at. E5 is the suggested move, which I didn't see. So honestly, I was probably gonna just take on e4, and she was gonna move her queen. I have to move my rook probably to f8. And after something like this, we again get a position where black is up a pawn. White can recapture the pawn, but shouldn't. Rook d7 is very strong. Rook f7, rook takes f7, and I can't take with the rook because of queen d8 check, rook f8, queen c7, and then she's gonna be threatening my bishop and mate on g7, and after rook f7 she'll simply play queen b8 check and pick up the bishop. So I'd have to take with the king, and this position looks close to lost because I'm just getting killed on dark squares here. So this was a missed opportunity by Jennifer, and she took my rook instead, as computer evaluates this move as a double question mark. This was per engine her only serious mistake in this game, and she took it relatively quickly. She spent 2 minutes here. So the time situation after bishop takes f6, we both have half an hour left after I played rook takes e4. And here she played queen d2, but in post-mortem she mentioned that she thought queen h5 was perhaps stronger. And again, it's easy to look at the engine and to see that this move is losing for white, but I analyzed this position quite a bit with her and also with other people, and we all thought like white is better here. It's hard to find this computer sequence. So rook g4, I guess, is reasonable. The e8 is held by the queen, and I guess after g3 we just play queen c6 and threaten mate on light squares, f3, and this is what I didn't see. This is like incredible. So after queen c5 we force the trade, and then her king has to step on a light square, and then her f-pawn becomes pinned. So the reason I'm winning is because I can just capture a bishop, and she can't take my rook. So non-trivial at all. So let's say bishop d8 check, and we have to find this bishop f8 move. A very complex tactical sequence which leads to just black winning. And if she plays rook f2, we don't even have to take the rook. We can take on f3 first, rook d8 check, king f7, bishop c3, and something like rook c4. Okay, these moves are not that straightforward to find, but we do have 2 pawns for exchange, and we can also capture on f2 anytime. So let's continue a little further. What about rook d7? Rook d7, king e8. So after something like this, check here, here, we're gonna be up 2 pawns in, but white does have drawing chances due to opposite color. So luckily for her, she didn't play queen h5. I'm not sure if I would have found the whole sequence. Chances are probably wouldn't, because I didn't see the idea with my rook not hanging. But she did play queen d2 and now bishop d5, and I was very happy with my position because my bishops are very strong, and this bishop on d5 is extremely powerful. I do get a lot of ideas to pressure her g2 pawn and also h2 pawn, and also her rooks are very passive and no easy way to break through into my position. But here she did play f3, and unfortunately here I blundered very badly. So I fought for about 7 minutes here, and I did look at bishop f4, I did look at bishop c5 check, and bishop takes h2 and all of that. So what's going on here? So we have a couple of things to consider. Defensively, we need to be aware of the idea of queen g5 and queen g7. So we have to play some kind of move that would shut down that idea. But also we perhaps have this idea of checking rook h4, rook takes h2, queen h4 mate, if her bishop leaves this diagonal. So there are like different patterns here. There's another pattern here with like rook c4, rook c2, rook takes g2, queen g4 check. These are just the ideas I'm throwing. None of them really work yet. And the best move, which didn't even make my candidate move list, was rook f4. This move is amazing. It shuts down queen g5 and also attacks the bishop. So bishop gotta leave somewhere down there. And this is kind of tough because here we have to find a move. There's nothing forcing. We just have to find some kind of useful move. Like Engine just proposes rook f5, and to be honest, I'm not sure why rook f5. And then queen c3, the Engine wants to just play rook f7. So very confusing. And what else we could do here? We could play this bishop c5 check, king h1 is forced, and then rook e3, and block off the queen from coming to g5. And then Jen was suggesting she was going to go bishop e7, and now I could grab this pawn, and we get this endgame where I lost my bishop pair, but I got the second pawn for my exchange. And then, for example, here, I do have very reasonable chances here. Like even if I lose this pawn on a7 down the road, this configuration of my bishop and 2 pawns is very durable. As long as I keep queens on the board, she can't really get to my king, because I think I have combination of pushing this pawn and some checks, but very difficult to say for sure. Engine gives some mysterious evaluation of plus 0.7, but I think practically my chances are very, very decent. And this is something that was within the realm of what I could find for sure. And then the other idea I actually had during the game was to play rook c4 and to meet queen g5 with rook c7. But now white has a very strong move, bishop e5. So basically black wants to avoid trading. So we can do so here. And we kind of want to grab this pawn if we can as well, to give us better chances. But white is a bit better here. The move that I overlooked completely was queen d7 here. So same idea, protect against checkmate. Jen always has this resource with sacrificing the exchange back, but I think this is nothing more than just inequality. So for example, here, she can win this pawn. But even if she does win that pawn, it's practically very difficult to win this position. And computer thinks it's equal. But of course, it's probably the game for two results, either white wins or draw being the most likeliest. But unfortunately for me, this was the third thing that I overlooked in this game. So I overlooked d6, I overlooked knight takes f6 check. I completely overlooked the fact that after bishop f4, queen b2, my g7 pawn is hanging. And so after I played bishop f4, I mistakenly thought that I was much better. I even thought she had to give up a queen with fe. And then, of course, I saw queen b2 and I realized the g7 pawn is hanging. I was like, oh my god, how can I overlook that? So now I'm in trouble. And first I'm going to show you guys how the game finished. Here I made my fourth blunder. Here I overlooked simple rook d4, and I kind of been blundering this rook forks and skewers lately. Not kind of like unorthodox ones, because here it's not so trivial, I guess, because your bishop is hanging. So I just overlooked that in the time scramble. After I played rook e3, I had under 10 minutes left. And then here, unfortunately, there is nothing I can do, because let's say I pick up this pawn. Now she takes on f4 and her queen is guarded. And if I were to take her bishop, I don't think I can avoid checkmate here. Rook g4 is coming, or rook f8. And computer says my best bet is mate in 6. So once I lose a piece, I'm just down a rook. And I did make a couple of moves just on autopilot, but I don't have any chance here, and I just get mated. So that's what happened. But I should have played rook c4 here, and after bishop takes g7, rook c2, queen f6, mate is threatened on f8. I check king h1 and queen f4. And objectively this is really bad, but practically there are some chances depending on white's reply, and at least here there is an opportunity for white to go wrong. I believe, perhaps. And so for example, even let's say like rook e1, we trade queens. These two bishops still like very resilient and provide the shield from white rooks being able to invade in black's position. And white will seek out the rook trade, and black will try to avoid it, and black also should try to win the a pawn, but not like this, because here this would be a mistake, because white gets black's a pawn and it's completely winning. So it's +2 per engine, but practically black still can hang on and does have chances to save this, at least much better than what happened in the game. So very interesting game, lots of takeaways here. First of all, the first takeaway is it's worth looking into knight takes c3, like all the top players play here. This line can still happen though through another move order. So even if I were to start playing knight takes c3 here through a different move order, I could get that position anyway. So it's worth looking into queen c7 and queen c8 here. And I don't want to bore you with all the complications here, but I do have at least a few games selected that I need to study a little more. And this is a very solid, durable opening line. This is played by many good players, very, very, very top players. So here this was maybe a little bit premature. And here bishop f6, or here bishop f6. So this whole thing with queen d7 does not work out. And I kind of managed to avoid the opening disaster because Jen didn't play with d5 right away, but still I had a lot of issues I had to deal with, and this was a spot where she took over, but fortunately She let me back in the game right here, and I needed to find either bishop c5 check, rook e3, or rook f4 to stay in the game, and who knows what would have happened. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this presentation. I recorded this after round 1, so I'm taking the buy in round 2. So I've never done this before. I recorded the video while I'm in the middle of a tournament, where potentially even my possible opponents can watch it. But I think this was a very interesting game, and kind of like a special occasion in the sense that you don't get to play the US champion every day. So thank you for watching this, and I'm gonna try to record more videos in the future.